Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about death. I want to talk about the fear of dying, whether it's yourself, the fear of losing a loved one. I'm going to talk about how I lost my father a little over 4 years ago to pancreatic cancer, and just talk about the reality of life and the rationality about death. And that's super important to cover all that because there's a lot of different fears surrounding death, whether it's yourself, whether it's family members, whether it's friends, it could be pets. There's many different ways that fear of death can latch. It can latch in an existential way or a solipsism way where you're kind of afraid you're living in a simulation or a virtual reality, gravity falling, a glitch in the universe. All those type of things kind of relate to the fear of death. So before I go any further, please don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button. Always go for the algorithms, especially since a lot of people are afraid of death. Existential fears and existential crises affect basically many people. I can't really think about anyone who would go their entire life without thinking about death to some degree. Once you hit a certain age, obviously, if you're a young child and you pass away from whatever illness, you're more than likely not conceptualizing and pondering about on death. If you're an able-bodied adult, you're more than likely going to ponder on death to a degree. When something's stuck underneath my tongue. I always eat before I do my videos, and I don't know why. Because it's right when I get back from the gym. It's a good time to do it. I'm very clear-minded in that regard. So, when I was in grad school, I remember exactly where I was. I was in the McDonald's parking lot going to a conference. I was a year into grad school, and I got a phone call from my father. My father was very much like me. Very, just a live personality. He was an attorney. When you go to the office, everyone was like, oh, Tony, it was just, my dad was full Italian, full of life. And he called me and he just was like, hey, what are you doing? I just knew right away something was wrong because he never did that. And I said, what's going on? He's like, I have a 10-centimeter tumor on my pancreas. And I remember because I was at that time, the way my grad school was set up, it was quarters. So you had 4 quarters a year. You took 36 credits in 11 weeks, 36 credits. It was a lot. And I said, is it on your liver? And he said, yes. I said, nah, shit. I said, you're dead. Straight up, you're dead. And we had a relationship like that. And he said, that's what the oncologist told me. I said, yeah, 6 months probably. He died in 7 months. He worked pretty much up until the end, but it was interesting because my sister took him all the chemo and all the radiation. So she kind of just saw my father. And my father and my sister had a much more emotional relationship than my dad and I. I always tell people this. I literally didn't say I love you to my dad until maybe like 9 hours before he died. Literally. I'm not even joking. Literally. We never said I love you or anything like that. I mean, I knew he loved me and I loved him, but we didn't do that for whatever reason. Probably cultural differences, that old school Italian mentality where you just don't talk about that stuff, which isn't always obviously the best. So then my dad passed away and we got a call. I remember I was sitting in my bed and my dad had a beach house in the Jersey Shore. And it was like a 1964 home that was rebuilt from the ground up to the studs. And so I had this like downward duplex style basement bedroom with these creaky old steps. He left certain things about the house, which was really cool. So I see the lights turn on at like 2:30 in the morning and then it's like, and then my sister turns my light. Obviously, I knew, and she's like, Dad passed away. And I was like, okay. So, we went there, went to the morgue the next day. And I remember it was me, the guy at the morgue, and my mom. And then we went in and they had my dad's favorite blanket. He loved purple. My friends make fun of me for that because I have a purple thermal. The purple thermal that you see me wear in the videos. And my mom was totally freaking out, totally. And they were separated for 14 years, but they were still really good friends. Remember, she said, bye, Tony. He was crying and left. And then they left me in there and I kind of stayed in there for a little bit. I was probably a little bit desensitized to death because at that time I'd already been working in the cadaver lab, working with dead bodies and anatomy and physiology for a year. So I was accustomed to seeing dead bodies for myself. I think anyone in a graduate medical type program, whatever it may be, who works with cadavers, whether you're a chiropractor, physical therapist, medical doctor, you're around it, whether you're a mortician. So you kind of desensitizes you to a little bit because you see it, right? It's like if you work in a clinic with a certain type of disease and you see that disease all the time, you're slightly desensitized to it because you're seeing it all the time, just like anything. But yeah, it was an interesting moment, right? And I remember pondering, I tried to touch his hand, and I wanted to see how strong rigor mortis was. And I remember like his hand was like this, and I'm not even joking. I could not move it. It was crazy how strong rigor mortis was. He also had what's called ascites, which is a lot of free fluid in the abdomen. He was really jaundiced. So he was about this color because his liver wasn't working, his pancreas wasn't working. He had metastatic pancreatic cancer, which, as anyone knows in the medical field, it's a death sentence. It's a total death sentence. Symptoms usually don't show until it's late, so that's how it was. So that was really like my first experience of seeing, and when I saw him the day before he died, where I told him I loved him, I was in hospice, walking around the hallways just thinking, holy fuck, these people, man, working in this environment. What an environment. I had someone recently, one of my friend's mothers who I'd never met, she was an oncologist nurse. She did oncology and then she did hospice. And I was just picking her brain for like 30 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, what was that like? She was like, oh, it's more likely with the families, it's tough. Pediatrics is really difficult to tell the parents. The kids really don't know. If you tell a 7-year-old kid they have an osteosarcoma in their leg, it's a really malignant tumor, they're like, oh, they'll go and call. Like, Grandma, I have a tumor, which is funny in its own way because they don't understand. It's the parents, the ones that are really freaking out. So when you look at death, whether it's in an existential way, whatever the fear is surrounding death, it's important to highlight it in a couple different ways. Number one, there's no escaping death. As more than likely, it should be. I always talk about Steve Jobs' quote from his 2004 commencement speech from Stanford, where he says, death is one of the best inventions of life. Out with the old, in with the new. New innovations, new ideas, a lot of benefits with that. And he said, he goes, you guys are the new, but someday you'll be shoveled away, and then the newer new will come in. That's just part of life. People spend a lot of time, understandably so, fearing and fretting, OCD or not. Remember, goes both ways, about the things they have absolutely no control over. You're going to die. You are going to die at some point. The manner in which you die doesn't really matter as much as we think it does. Whether you have a painful death or not, once you die, there's a lack of consciousness. There's probably not even a memory of your death. This is something I ponder on sometimes. It's very interesting to think about. I'll be like, well, when you die, everything I'm talking about right now will have no meaning to me anymore because I'm dead. So does this consciousness actually mean anything when I die? And not in like an existential way, just I'm at a point in my life where that won't latch because I understand and have accepted that death is a part of life. And again, this is why it's important to realize your dogs die, your family members die. Fairness and deservingness are man-made concepts. If they were not man-made, children would not die of malignant tumors. 5 million children wouldn't die a year from different types of dehydration and illnesses in Africa. Life is just brutal. Life is super brutal. And the reason why humans are so deathly afraid of death now, probably more than ever. Remember, societal and cultural beliefs dictate fears primarily in a lot of ways. So first world countries like America and the UK, obviously POCD and harm OCD are going to latch to where 1,000 years ago, no, they would have never latched. It was all religious OCD because of the beliefs about going to heaven and hell. This is why I tell people the practical application of OCD is much more important than the neurophysiology and neuroanatomy. Cool to look at. I love it. I've read many neuro books in grad school in my life, but that has no application for OCD recovery. It's just cool. It's just cool to learn, right? It's cool, it's just awesome. But that's just one of the main things about life that we have to work towards accepting. And a lot of people will go down the rabbit hole that I used to go down and say, well, if you're going to die one day, what's the point of living? I could see why people would think that, but there's more to it because you can make a meaning in other people's lives. Even if, you're going to die one day. That's the way I see it. I see it in a different way, right? I understand why people see it in different ways and why people do things that might not be the best decisions for themselves or other people. But I look at life that I'm going to die one day, so I might as well go for it. I might as well go all in. Sometimes in an unbalanced manner, but I can accept that and then kind of fix that over, while I'm going. Funny fact, this is a beach cup and I live not close to the beach anymore because I grew up at the Jersey Shore. Then I grew up in Florida. I lived in Florida for 10 years. But after my dad died, I took a bunch of stuff from his house, his beach house, and I took all these beach cups. My dad was an interesting character. So Rob and I always talk about a Mark Twain quote. You were dead for millions of years before, from the conception of the universe or the multiverse, which is another really cool way to go down the existential solipsism type of discussions. This is the type of stuff that I really like talking about because it really kind of expands the thinking process, and it's really cool to hear other people's perspectives on these things. And that could be anything from a religious way, from the Big Bang Theory, anything, because we just don't, it's just interesting to talk about this stuff with different people. And no, I'm not religious personally, and it is important to say anytime I bring up religion, it is important to say you can have faith. Obviously, you can have faith and recover from OCD. Just how you could be concerned about death and still recover from OCD, but it's not the concern; it's the dire fear about the unknown of what happens after death that keeps a lot of people stuck, and that's really something that holds a lot of fear people back. So you have to look at it in the most basic sense. Millions a year before death, we have a very short life on this rock floating in space for whatever reason that no one can prove or disprove why we're here. This is why humans cling to certainty in so many different ways, trying to figure out what is our purpose and what is our meaning. And really, there is no true purpose or true meaning in the universal principle. All we really have is these are people that respond to given situations, from biological tendencies, cultural, dogmatic tendencies, belief systems, primarily based off where you are right now. I don't believe in Santa Claus right now. I used to believe in Santa Claus when I was younger. It goes to show you how malleable our beliefs are. I never personally was very scared about death. I would definitely say I'm a dopamine addict is a great word. I like climbing. I like speed. I like anything that gets my jitters going. Very strenuous physical activities. I just like all that stuff, right? And it's not for everyone. I don't go into it with the mindset of like, oh, I want to get closer to death. Like I want a near-death experience. I've definitely had some near-death experiences. And that's what makes life really unique, in my opinion. The ability to transform, the fact that I am going to die, and I don't know when I'm going to die, so I might as well just go for it. That belief comes easier to me than most, but different beliefs come easier to different people. So it is really important to break that down. It is important to realize that, we think about the other aspect of, well, that means if something happens to me and then my family, I'm not around for my family. So that guilt, well, you won't feel guilt more than likely because there's no consciousness. You're not going to feel anything. You'll be dead. So you won't know if they're crying. You won't know. You'll be dead. Your life will be over. That might sound morbid, but it's reality. I always draw this. I'm going to draw it in this one. I just did it in my last video. Everyone always laughs when I do this. This line is objective reality. And we know that the further you move away from this line in either direction and move into subjective reality, you really set yourself up for some trouble. Now, some things, even the most objective things, whether it's math or physics, can still be debated to some degree, usually not winning the debate, but can be debated from another perspective. But the broad span stuff where we really go out this way in either direction, radical ideologies and stuff like that, especially like really, really crazy beliefs about death and stuff like that, really tend to set you up because it just doesn't line up with the anecdotes of what we've seen, that no one's ever came back from the dead that we know of. Again, you can have whatever beliefs you want. But the reality is we've never seen anyone come back from the dead. There's no documentation on an empirical data level. And just, looking at death for what it is. Like I said, death can happen in any way. The way you die doesn't really matter because once you're dead, you're dead, and you probably have no remembrance of this consciousness. Life is just consciousness, so when you die, it's a lack of consciousness. And this is all really cool. I think this is a really important topic to talk about. I've never gone to a death cafe, but I would love to go to one. I just think it's really important to realize that death isn't inherently a bad thing. Now, don't get me wrong, I love life, and I would like to be here for an extended period of time, but I have no control over that in many ways. It's kind of an illusion of control in so many different factors. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, talk about death with me in the comments if you want, your fears about death, what you think about death, what you think about the afterlife, and we can just kind of have a good discussion about it. Not to get off the top, it is related to death and anything. One of the most important things we could do for ourselves is have discussions about this stuff and see it in an open eye from other people's perspective. I think it's really important. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video talking about the lovely topic of death. And as always, have a great day.